Neighbors in her Tucson area have turned her front yard into a memorial with candles, and people nationwide are keeping her in their thoughts. This investigation has caught the eye of the Oval Office and every major agency. The specialized task force mentioned by the sheriff remains fully engaged in the search. If you noticed anything strange in early February, or if a certain interaction just felt wrong, or if someone you know started acting erratic after the first of that month, please speak up now. If there's a tiny detail you have been keeping to yourself, it is definitely important. Contact 1-800-CALL-FBI. A reward of up to $100,000 is available for tips regarding NY's location or the culprit's capture. Nancy's family is putting up a private $1 million bounty for any intel that finally brings her back to them. Somebody has the truth, and federal agents are gaining ground every single moment. We are not letting this story go. We will track every lead and official breakthrough until the end because the Guthrie family needs to know the truth. Deep within the city of Tucson, the solutions to this mystery are just waiting for someone to uncover them. Imagine an 84-year-old woman all by herself in the dead of night out in Tucson, Arizona. She actually opened that door. This is the exact detail that makes zero sense. It is the one thing keeping detectives and her loved ones from getting any sleep. They just lie there staring at the ceiling, stuck in a never-ending cycle, wondering about that same bizarre choice. Why would an 84-year-old lady alone at 2 in the morning just unlock the door? No phone call, no shouting, just a welcome. I really need you to wrap your head around that before we dive deeper. Because that single choice, that split second where Nancy Guthrie reached for the knob and walked toward the unknown, is the heart of this entire mystery. Now, a 25-year veteran of the Bureau just dropped a chilling theory that explains everything we have seen so far. Stick around, because by the time we finish this deep dive, you are going to see a side of this case that the mainstream media has totally overlooked. Once you spot it, it is impossible to ignore. But first, let me be totally transparent with you as always. Every detail I am sharing comes from legitimate, high-level, and verified experts. We are talking about federal agents and analysts who have spoken with major networks like CNN and NBC. We are not naming any names. We do not point fingers at individuals. This is a serious federal probe, and we are treating it with total respect. Our goal is to look at the professional frameworks built by people who have spent their lives solving cases like this. Let us head back to February 1st in Tucson, 1:47 in the morning. The porch camera suddenly cuts to black. This was no technical error or a low battery. Someone reached up and ripped that thing right off the wall. 25 minutes tick by. Then a different motion sensor on the property goes off at 2:12 in the morning. There is no video, no backup, just a single digital notification saying something was prowling around in the shadows. 16 minutes later, at 2:28 a.m., Nancy's heart monitor loses its connection and she vanishes into thin air. That is the official sequence of events. Those are the cold, hard facts of the matter. But here is the thing I have been chewing on for weeks. This is what we really need to talk about. A 25-year Bureau veteran who ran behavioral units in Denver has stepped forward with a theory that changes everything. He explains not just the what, but the why. He cracks the code on the one thing nobody could figure out. I have been digging through every professional report and behavioral breakdown available from the experts. I have watched the clips and read every single statement from the official sources involved. What I am showing you is not just a guess. It is a professional profile created by someone who solves the unsolvable. By the end of this video, you will understand why there has not been an arrest just yet, exactly what the authorities are waiting for, and what the intruder totally failed to see coming. Let us get right into the details. 10 days after she went missing, the director posted footage of a masked, armed individual on that front porch. The physical device was gone. Nancy did not even have a subscription to save her videos. But investigators managed to dig up residual data hidden deep inside the company's servers. Think about the luck involved there. The person who took that camera was certain they had wiped the trail. They grabbed it, trashed it, and thought they were safe. They were absolutely convinced that the video evidence was gone for good. They were dead wrong. The digital footprint remained. The server held on to that recording, just waiting for someone to find it. And as soon as the pros got a look at that video, something came to light that I believe is the most overlooked piece of this entire puzzle. The experts did not just see a guy in a mask. They saw a behavior that told a very specific story. Here's the first detail that caught the eye of every single investigator who reviewed the tape. This guy is not nervous, not in the slightest. One top analyst used a specific word that I cannot stop thinking about. She mentioned how he saunters up like he owns the place. Think about that. You do not stroll like that when you are a stranger. That is not the posture of someone whose heart is racing from the fear of being caught somewhere they do not belong. Usually an intruder flinches. They freeze up or hide when a light comes on, constantly checking over their shoulder. A stranger tries to get in and out as fast as possible to avoid any chance of being seen. This person was slow and confident. He walked straight to the front door like he had every right to be standing there. Fox noted a total disregard for being identified, a sentiment echoed by former FBI high-ranker Andrew McCabe. As a top-tier investigator breaking silence on the matter, he reached that exact verdict after reviewing the tapes on his own. His gait wasn't sneaky or panicked. He didn't move like a typical intruder. A pair of the nation's premier criminal profilers examined the evidence and mirrored each other's findings without speaking once. That takeaway is chilling because outsiders don't just stroll up. No unknown person acts like it is a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Someone wearing a mask and packing heat at an 84-year-old's place at 2 in the morning should be terrified of discovery. This individual acted like he fully expected his presence to be accepted by whoever was inside. That relaxed vibe, that chillingly nonchalant stroll toward the entrance is the most significant psychological lead we have. Observe his reaction to the security lens. He shows up totally unequipped. No laser pointers, spray cans, or hoods, nothing professional. Josh Campbell, the ex-FBI agent reporting for CNN, immediately noted that if this were a calculated hit, the guy would have arrived with a legitimate way to neutralize that threat. Instead, he simply reached up with a glove to block the lens. When that failed, he scanned the surroundings. He searched the floor and the foliage before literally stuffing a clump of bushes in front of the view. He utilized garden greenery. Retired agent Steve Moore, a frequent network analyst, described it as deeply obsessive, yet poorly executed. Then he dropped a truth that really hits home. He claimed this was likely the subject's very first foray into this kind of activity. Think about that contradiction. Meticulously obsessed, yet a total rookie. Both dynamics are at play here. He thought ahead enough to identify the camera, but lacked the foresight to bring a tool to fix it. This disconnect between planning and readiness isn't the mark of a career criminal. It is the signature of someone who ran the scenario through their mind 100 times, but never practiced in reality. A person who froze once a real hurdle appeared. And here's the detail that almost everyone seems to have missed. He did not destroy the lens, he obscured it. That specific choice reveals a lot psychologically. Smashing hardware suggests you know the bridge is burned. Tucking some leaves over it, however clumsily, is the move of someone who thinks they will still slip away unnoticed. A person convinced the scheme will still work. Someone who had not yet realized that things were spiraling out of control. Regarding the firearm, detectives spotted what looks like a compact semi-automatic. Expert Stephen Osalski likened it to a Sig Sauer P365, a very standard concealed carry piece. But Andrew McCabe pointed out a detail about the holster that has really stuck with me. He noted that no one with military or police backgrounds would carry a weapon that way, dangling right in the middle of their waist. It was not positioned for a quick draw with a dominant hand. It was not set for combat or defense, showing the person had likely never handled it in a high-pressure scenario. Steve Moore added that the gear was totally mismatched. A tiny pistol designed for deep concealment was shoved into a massive holster meant for a full-size duty weapon. They do not fit together. This was not a choice made by a gun person. Then you have the gloves. Bulky ones, which analysts Johnny Grusing mentioned would make pulling the trigger nearly impossible. You cannot fit a padded finger into a trigger guard meant for a bare hand. It is impossible to get a steady handle on a subcompact through that much fabric. The very items meant to hide his DNA made the gun totally useless. Grusing's take was blunt. That weapon was likely just a prop, a theatrical device, rather than a tool for murder meant to intimidate an 84-year-old into doing what he wanted. It was there for the fear factor, not for firing. And if the firearm was never the real mechanism, we have to wonder, what was the actual leverage used to get Nancy Guthrie to unlatch her door at 2 in the morning? Johnny Grusing has a theory, and his insight shifted my entire perspective on this mystery. I want to take a moment to introduce Johnny Grusing properly, as his perspective is the foundation for everything we are about to explore. Grusing put in 25 years as a special agent working out of the FBI's Denver office. For 13 of those years, he led the behavioral analysis unit, the elite squad tasked with decoding the mindsets of violent predators. His job was to figure out more than just the crime. He needed to understand the motive. He focused on their thought patterns, their excuses, and how they react when things go sideways. He has tackled brutal offenses, abductions, sexual crimes, murders, and cold cases that sat in storage for decades while families waited for closures that never arrived. He also authored a book detailing the life of Scott Kamel, a killer who hid in plain sight within a community that trusted him. Additionally, he helped take down the Golden State Killer, Joseph James D'Angelo, a predator who haunted California for 40 years and slipped away for so long that many cops had lost hope. Grusing and his crew utilized advanced genetic genealogy to construct a family tree from tiny samples of DNA, allowing them to pinpoint a specific man and finally give those suffering families the answers they had sought for ages. I am bringing this up because it relates perfectly to the current situation. That exact same tech, forensic genetic genealogy, is being applied right now to the mixed DNA samples found at Nancy Guthrie's place, which were sent to a lab in Florida. The same method Grusing used to solve an impossible case is now targeting whoever stood on that porch. When Johnny Grusing examines a file, he is not just guessing, he is analyzing human conduct. He is analyzing choices. He studies the way a person carries themselves and their split-second reactions, turning those details into profiles that lead to solid convictions. And after reviewing this specific case, he concluded that something went south on that porch. An unplanned event occurred that shifted a cold, calculated strategy into a scene of pure desperation and extreme violence. He is convinced that this something was a moment of recognition. This is his theory. According to Grusing, the intruder arrived at Nancy Guthrie's house in the early hours of February, first wearing a face covering. However, Grusing argues that the mask was not primarily meant to hide his face from the security cameras. The mask was intended to prevent Nancy from seeing a total stranger and immediately freaked out when she came to the door. He wanted her to see a familiar silhouette or a shape her mind could try to process before pure terror took over. He wanted to be someone whose presence her brain would try to rationalize for a split second instead of just running away. Grusing posed a question to the public that I really want you to consider carefully. He asked, is it possible that since there is no sound, he is either knocking hard or ringing the bell, hoping Nancy will answer, and hiding his identity just enough so that she might, in her confused state, actually open up? That is a serious behavioral theory with a very specific and absolutely terrifying physical reality behind it. The entire plan hinged on Nancy coming to the front door. It required her, alone and half asleep at 2 in the morning, to decide to turn that lock and face whoever was outside. Grusing thinks she did. He believes she walked to the door. He believes she opened it. But that is exactly where the plan failed. Because in that instant, standing face to face in the dim light of the porch, in the middle of the night, an unexpected variable entered the mix. Maybe his mask slipped, maybe the porch light hit his features in a way he did not expect. Or maybe it was not about looks. It could have been his voice, the way he spoke, the way he stood, or how he moved his arm. There is something deep within the human nervous system that does not need a clear view to know exactly who someone is. It is something that identifies a familiar person through tiny cues long before the conscious mind even realizes what is happening. Scientific research on how humans recognize one another is very clear on this point. We spot people we know by their gait, their posture, their voice, and the unique way they move through a room. A person you have known for a long time triggers a response in your brain before you even think about who they are. It is not a choice you make. It is biology. It is the human brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. Grusing believes that during those seconds on the porch, Nancy Guthrie's brain did exactly what it was supposed to. She knew exactly who was standing there. And at that same moment, the intruder realized that his entire plan had just blown up. The one thing his whole scheme relied on, his secret identity, was completely gone. Everything that followed was not the original plan. The blood, the failing pacemaker, and the fact that Nancy vanished forever. All of those events, Grusing thinks, started with that one moment when she knew him. This is not just a guess. This behavioral system stems from solid evidence provided by an expert who is consistently accurate. The frantic spiral occurring once a culprit realizes they are caught is a trend Grusing has analyzed for decades. That is the exact moment a calculated scheme collapses into a hopeless disaster. The consequences of this logic extend well beyond those brief porch interactions. If Nancy knew him, he is no stranger. He belongs to her circle. He is someone already on the FBI radar. Let's examine the ransom demands because they prove the recognition theory from a new angle that media outlets mostly ignore. Various news organizations received these ransom notes. TMZ got a high-tech demand that specifically requested payment in cryptocurrency. Other agencies saw similar messages. However, one specific detail immediately baffled the detectives from day one. Not one single ransom message was delivered to the Guthrie family. No proof of life, no payment cutoff times, zero contact with Savannah Guthrie, a famous American reporter with a massive platform and millions of viewers. Just process that for a second. If you snatch an 84-year-old woman for cash and her daughter is a household name, you do not email TMZ. You contact the family, you reach out to Savannah, you build a bridge. You provide proof of life to verify your claims and stop the family from calling the police. That is the standard operating procedure for every ransom kidnapping in the history of American crime. This specific case ignores that blueprint completely. The conclusion from Grusing was very simple. These ransom messages do not function like a real extortion attempt. They look like a red herring meant to trick investigators into chasing money instead of the actual motive. If cash was not the goal, what was? Grusing suggested a personal grudge, though he spoke very carefully. He clarified he was using public data, but his provided framework was incredibly precise. Someone felt targeted by Nancy Guthrie herself, regardless of Savannah's status or the family's fame, specifically Nancy. It was something private, something very personal, a grudge building long enough to drive someone to her door with a weapon at midnight. Then Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos spoke to the Daily Mail and used a word that made me hit rewind. He questioned if the motive was cash or perhaps revenge. Revenge. The acting sheriff used the word revenge in a public setting. That choice was not some accident. That word was intentional. Paired with Grusing's theory, this is not a botched kidnapping for hire. This is something much more personal, much more focused, and much easier to track once the right lead is found. This is where the case moves, from psychological theory to documented investigative facts. Listen closely here, because this part shifts the entire outlook of the current investigation. In mid-February, about 2.5 weeks in, the Tucson gun shop owner revealed something previously unconfirmed. His name is Philip Martin. He co-owns Armor Bear Arms, located in Tucson. He shared a specific story with Fox News Digital around February 10th or 12th. An agent arrived with 3 pages of names and photos, roughly 18 to 24 people. The agent told Martin to cross-reference every name with his sales logs for any weapon buys within the year. 3 full pages, 18 to 24 names, with photos attached to each one. Martin scanned every name. No matches were found, but his other observation was far more significant. He noted that the photos strongly resembled the facial features captured in the doorbell video. This was not a loose likeness. It was a specific, intentional match. The FBI was not just canvassing random names at gun shops in Tucson. They were checking a curated group with physical traits matching the camera footage. Reporter Brian Enton, who has covered this case closer than anyone, confirmed agents hit multiple Tucson gun stores with these lists. Multiple locations, a methodical search. Then NBC News added even more. Word on the street is a gun shop owner saw a list spanning several pages filled with photos of younger and middle-aged men who looked like they were in mugshots. These are individuals with criminal histories, people already logged in a system whose identities and faces are easily searched and well recorded. You do not hunt for a phantom like that. That is not how you move when you are flying blind without a single theory or a solid lead to follow. You do not walk into specific shops with specific faces asking pointed questions unless you have a crystal clear, evidence-backed idea of who you want. The feds have actual names. They have faces. They are following a trail of paperwork, and they are sure the person on Nancy Guthrie's porch is on those pages. And this is exactly how they managed to track them down. Reports from Inside Edition suggest those names and faces on the federal list were gathered partly by digging through Walmart's sales history. This ties straight back to the one piece of evidence in this entire investigation that police could link for certain to a single shop. That backpack, a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiking bag, is a Walmart exclusive. Sheriff Nanos made sure to confirm that fact. He labeled it the only item of clothing or gear on the person of interest that they could definitely pin to one specific retail chain. The rest of the outfit, from the gloves to the boots, was common, but that specific backpack came from just one place. And Walmart is known for keeping tight records, from digital transaction logs to the security footage running inside every single one of their stores. If the guy used a credit card to buy that bag, there is a digital paper trail with his name stamped right on it. Even if he paid with cash, there is a good chance security cameras caught his face at the checkout, giving police a fresh look for their comparison. Federal agents teamed up with Walmart's corporate office to pull those leads, which is a matter of record. Now, watch how the dots connect. The bag points to Walmart. Walmart points to their sales logs. Those logs give up actual names. Names lead to photos. Those photos go to every gun shop in Tucson. Then owners check if those guys ever bought a weapon like the one on camera. It is a slow, methodical grind. It is the work of an investigation that is picking up speed, not one that has hit a dead end. This is the strategy of a team moving with total confidence toward a conclusion they already feel is certain. Then we have the genetic evidence to consider, because while the Walmart lead and the gun shop search are one path, the genetic testing in Florida is an entirely different beast. Yet both of these paths are racing toward the exact same conclusion. Cops found genetic material at the Guthrie home that does not match Nancy or her family. Relatives were all tested and quickly ruled out. That unknown genetic sample, found right where Nancy's blood was discovered on the porch, was shipped to a specialized private lab in Florida. Sheriff Nanos pointed out that this genetic sample is a mixed profile, meaning it has DNA from multiple people, which makes getting a clean hit in the federal database a bit of a nightmare. But the federal database is not their only play anymore. C.C. Moore is a top-tier genetic expert, not just some talking head on a news show, but the actual person who pioneered the use of genetic genealogy for criminal cases in the United States. She has personally helped crack more than 1,000 different criminal investigations across the country. She told the news something that has been playing on a loop in my mind. She said, if I were the one responsible, I would be terrified right now because with the way we use genetic genealogy today, he will be caught. Not might be, but absolutely will be. And she laid out the timeline. If the guy has deep American roots, identifying him through public family tree databases could take just a few hours. The longer a family has been in this country, the more public records exist, making it easier for investigators to trace the tree right to him. This is the exact same tech used to finally catch the Golden State Killer after all those years. Joseph James DeAngelo spent decades thinking he was untouchable and had successfully vanished. He was wrong. His own DNA mapped out his family tree, and that map led the police straight to his front door. This technology is indifferent to how careful a criminal is. It does not matter if years or even decades have passed. If anyone in your extended family has ever sent a kit to a genealogy site, you are on the map, period. Let me pull all this together because the profile of his behavior is even more chilling than most people realize. When you look at the full picture, the story it tells is impossible to ignore. This guy walked up to that house without a hint of hesitation. He had a certain swagger. That is how someone walks when they expect Nancy Guthrie to let them in without a second thought. Not like a stranger, but like someone who belonged there and felt their presence was totally normal and fine. He did not use high-tech tools to hide from the camera. He just grabbed some nearby bushes to block the view. That is the mark of someone who practiced this in his head but had zero real-world experience. He was a complete rookie. He gripped a fake-looking firearm awkwardly in a mismatched rig, his bulky gloves making the whole setup nearly impossible to handle properly. That pistol was never intended to be discharged. It served as a tool for intimidation against a woman he thought he could break, yet the stains on the deck proved the encounter turned brutal anyway. The struggle didn't happen inside. It unfolded right there on the porch, in plain sight between the entrance and the sidewalk. The behavioral analysis by Grusin clarifies why the scheme fell apart the second Nancy's mind reacted with a natural human instinct. See, she identified the person standing right there, and he realized it instantly. Every move he made following that moment was fueled by sheer panic, not some master plan. Former FBI lead Lance Lean told National News that he suspects the current investigative quiet implies they are methodically stacking their evidence. Former federal agent Marino Cannell, a brilliant analyst who has followed this mystery closely, shared a perspective that stuck. She noted that those detectives are holding cards we cannot see. They are on to a major breakthrough, but actually validating the facts in court is the current hurdle. Proving it is the hard part. They aren't struggling to name him or locate him. They are struggling to convict him. There is a massive gap between a hunch and a verdict. That specific legal gray area is exactly where this whole missing person case is stalled right now. Sheriff Chris Nanos mentioned back in March that their initial theories from day one remain the primary focus of the entire team. He emphasized that the motive is clear to them and that the victim was chosen with specific intent. You do not pick a target you have no history with. Random strangers do not carry deep-seated personal vendettas. The sheriff's phrasing confirms the profile. This was an intimate act. This was someone who belonged to Nancy Guthrie's inner circle, and the Bureau is carefully stitching together how the violence on that porch links back to one individual with a clear grudge. Retired Agent Stephen Rogers shared his take with the media quite bluntly, stating he is convinced that someone who crossed paths with Nancy daily is likely the one responsible for her disappearance. He pointed to the kind of insider access required to know her private habits, her alarm codes, her daily itinerary, or even who handled her house repairs, her medical needs, or her lawn care. This was someone lurking in her world who studied her life from the inside out. A person who knew the perfect moment to strike and assume they could charm or trick her into opening that front door. The authorities are currently looking at a very small, specific group of people. A specialized laboratory in Florida is processing genetic material that experts say will eventually lead to a definitive name. They have recovered retail records and store surveillance. They are visiting every local gun shop with photos of specific people of interest. The case rests on a profiling strategy developed by the same expert who once utilized this very tactic to crack one of the most famous cold cases in history. Plus, the sheriff is doubling down on his theory of why this happened, refusing to back off his original claims even after weeks of dead ends. Grusing examined every detail: the casual approach, the makeshift lens cover, the plastic-looking weapon in a poor holster, the physical evidence left on the deck, and those ransom demands that never even made it to her family, all pointing toward a personal grudge, a conclusion reached by both the profiler and the local sheriff. This leads to a single chilling realization that connects every bizarre piece of the puzzle. When she opened that door, Nancy knew exactly who she was looking at, and it rattled him. No arrests are happening today. But that is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of a team building an airtight legal case. They are working to bridge the massive gap between knowing the truth and proving the truth. Based on everything we have seen since she vanished, that gap is closing fast. Nancy has been gone since the 1st of February. She is 84. She needs her meds daily. Her daughter Savannah has stepped away from her morning news anchor chair to spend every waking hour searching for her. Her sister Annie is also on the front lines. The entire family has been incredibly brave and vocal throughout this nightmare. Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed the victim was chosen with specific intent. Someone who knew her routines, her home, and her vulnerabilities from the inside. FBI analysts believe this person once had legitimate access to her property as a repairman, a caregiver, or a trusted contact in her daily life. Investigators are not naming suspects today, but they are not searching blindly either. A specialized lab in Florida is processing genetic evidence right now. Retail records, store surveillance, and gun shop footage are all part of an airtight case being carefully built, because knowing the truth is not enough. Proving it is. If you noticed anything unusual in early February, a behavioral change, an odd interaction, someone who suddenly went quiet, that detail matters more than you think. If someone in your circle started acting differently after February 1st, or if something felt wrong but you stayed silent, now is the time to speak. You can contact the FBI tip line at 1-800-C-ALL-FBI. A reward of up to $1 million is available for information that brings Nancy home. Nancy's daughter, Savannah, stepped away from her career. Her sister, Annie, is searching every single day. This family has never stopped fighting for her. Neighbors have filled her front yard with candles. Communities across the country are holding vigil. No one is letting this story fade. The investigators are not stuck. They are building. Every hour brings them closer. The gap between knowing and proving is closing fast. Somewhere in Tucson, the answers already exist. They are waiting for one person, perhaps someone watching this right now, to finally speak up. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, was taken from her home in Tucson, Arizona at 2 in the morning, and someone in her own circle knows the truth. She lived alone, depended on daily medication, and had no reason to fear the person standing at her front door that night. At 1:47 a.m., the porch camera went dark, not from a technical failure, but because someone physically removed it from the wall. 25 minutes later, a motion sensor triggered. 16 minutes after that, Nancy's heart monitor lost its signal, and she was gone. The porch camera captured everything before it was taken. Investigators recovered the footage from a server the attacker never knew existed. What that footage revealed was not panic. It was not the rush movement of a stranger. It was slow, calm, and completely familiar. Top FBI behavioral analysts used one word to describe the approach: sauntering. He walked toward her door like he had every right to be there. That single behavioral detail, the absence of fear, told experienced profilers everything. This was not a random target. This was personal. The most dangerous threats are often the ones we already know and trust.